Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us to the County Council's Youth Town Hall hybrid meeting. I'm Jordan Lindsay. We are grateful for your participation and look forward to hearing your questions. We will be taking some live questions tonight, as well as questions sent through the Q&A function online, via Zoom, and here in person. If you have a question, please send it there, and we will do our best to get you an answer. If we don't get to your question tonight, we will be reaching out individually with answers at a later date if needed. For those students who are in attendance tonight, we will have an opportunity to get SL hours for your time. Please stay on the Zoom until the end of the meeting, and we will put up the slide with instructions on how to get credit for tonight. We also have live captioning in Spanish for the duration of the town hall. To enable live captioning in Zoom, select the CC icon at the bottom of your screen in Zoom for closed captioning services. My colleague Marcela Rodriguez will now translate instructions on how to access this captioning service into Spanish for participants. Marcela, to you.
Thank you so much, Jordan. También contamos con sus títulos en español durante la duración de esta asamblea. Si desea habilitar los subtítulos en nuestro idioma, seleccione el icono CC en la parte inferior de su pantalla de Zoom. Gracias. Back to you, Jordan.
Thank you so much, Marcela. Now I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to Council President Gabe Albornoz for some opening remarks, and then council members and the Board of Education members will introduce themselves. After that, we will move on to information from our partner organizations and move on to your questions, guys. Council President Albornoz, to you.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And this is by far one of my favorite nights of the year. The Youth Summit, the Youth Town Hall, which has been going on now since two previous councils, is an important opportunity for us to hear from all of you. And just a little bit of background about me. I used to be the director of the Recreation Department, and while I was there, we helped start the Excel Beyond the Bell program. I want to thank the incredible representatives here from the Recreation Department for their leadership and for all that they do for all of you, and express just how proud I am of all of our young people for being here tonight and virtual. There are over 600 students that registered to participate in tonight's event virtually, and I want to thank Dr. Monifa McKnight, our Superintendent of Public Schools, for being here, Ms. Brenda Wolf, the President of our Board of Education, Mr. Arvin Kim, who is our student member of the board. And let me just, in 1 minute or less, explain kind of how the county works a little bit. So there are 9 members of the county council. And one of the most important things that the council does is pass the budget for the entire county. The budget is over $6 billion, and more than half of that budget is appropriated to our incredible school system. But our friends and colleagues in the Board of Education and Dr. McKnight decide how exactly that money is going to be spent. And that money is spent on paying our teachers and our administrators. It helps pay for the maintenance of our buildings, and the partnership between the council and the Board of Education and our school system is super, super important. And so we work closely together to tackle some really important issues. And the council also funds a lot of programs like Excel Beyond the Bell that are run by our Department of Recreation. So we are all on the same team, and we are here to serve you, and we are all so proud of all of you. And we know how challenging these last few years have been. But we want to let you know that we care very much about each and every one of you, and we want to help in any way that we can. So with that, I'm now going to invite the President of our Board of Education, Ms. Wolf, to make some opening remarks.
Good evening. I'm so excited to be here with you this evening. It's always an honor to be before our students because you know what? You are our customer. What you think matters to the Board of Education. So I just want you to know we're here to listen. Be sure to ask anything that is of concern to you tonight, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Dr. McKnight.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to our students and thank you to the staff from Montgomery County Public Schools here. I want to thank our council for hosting such an important event I love being a part of this county and particularly take much pride in serving as a superintendent because we place so much value on the experiences that our students have, and we build those experiences from hearing from you. Some of you, many of you, are no strangers because I see you often. I see you at our budget advisory sessions. I see you giving comment at our public hearings related to our budget CIP. And some of you are smiling on the front row. I want you to feel very proud of that. And this is great because you really are learning really important skills about advocacy to make our county a wonderful place, Montgomery County Public Schools, a fantastic space. And so for those of you who have not engaged in those spaces, hopefully tonight, you will continue to see others model that, and we look forward to continuing to hear from you and take your input into consideration as we plan for a school system that needs to serve the needs that you require to really take place in the education that we value you having every day in our school system. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to hearing all of your comments tonight.
Thank you so much, Dr. McKnight. I'll now ask Mr. Kim to introduce himself.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our students for joining us today. Before we started today, I had the chance to speak with many of you all, and seeing students from every part of our county is truly an honor to have you all here, and I know many students from across the county are joining us virtually as well. So I think I speak for everyone at the table when I say that we are honored and eager to hear your questions and input, and again, thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, and we have 3 colleagues who are here in person, 2 that are attending virtually, and another that is listening in but had a family issue. But I'm going to now turn it over to the chair of our Education and Culture Committee, Councilmember Rice, who is one of the reasons why we are here tonight, because it was his vision, along with the previous council, that ensured we have this Youth Town Hall every year. Councilmember Rice.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President, and welcome to all of you this evening. This is incredibly important because at a time in which our rights are being assaulted every single day, it is your voices that will matter. You're going to speak up about what our society is going to look like when it comes to racial unrest, when it comes to police violence, when it comes to all of the issues that are important, supporting gender identity. When it comes to everything that you care about, the success of you as an individual and being able to attend colleges or being able to go on to different career pathways, all of that is shaped by government. And you have a role to play in making sure that it works for each and every one of you. All of you are unique in your own way and have your own needs. And we as a school system, as well as a county, owe it to you to make sure that we give you everything that you need to be successful. It may sound like it's a pipe dream, something that's pie in the sky, but the reality is that's what we owe to each and every one of you. And so tonight, I want you to speak from the heart. I want you to not be afraid about expressing what it is that you feel and talk about what it is that matters to you. If you care about your neighborhoods being ridden with crime, if you care about violence in your communities, if you care about being bullied, whatever it is, I encourage you to speak up because it's our job to listen. And not only to listen, but to also make a difference. And I will tell you that we have responded over and over again to individuals who have brought forth their message tonight and how we've made that then become something that's enshrined in law. I can't tell you how many young people have come to this council, as well as to my office when I was a state representative, and have ensured that we have addressed the issue with either legislation or policy shaped by you. I'll close with just saying that, it's interesting. Some people may think that it's fun and games to come to the council. Some people may think that this isn't something that should be treated seriously. The reality is that it should be, because you're talking and speaking about issues that are going to shape your lives and your friends and families' lives. That's what it is that we do each and every day. I just left the White House earlier today and was speaking with senior advisors to the president about what it is that the Biden-Harris administration cares about, which is each and every one of you. And we talked about the money that's being spent on education, on policies to ensure that you're successful. And I will tell you that the message that came from them that I wanted to share with you tonight is that you need to make sure that you play an active role in shaping your community, and your government. And if you don't understand that there are other people out there that will shape it for you, just think, if they don't know you, how do they have your best interests at heart? It's up to you. The decision is yours. Do you want to be a community that's representative of the issues and the ideas that represent you and what you care about? Or do you want to be one that just sits on the sidelines and just watches it happen and passes you by? The choice is yours.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice. We've got two other colleagues who are joining us virtually. I'll start with Council Vice President Glass. Please introduce yourself. Council Vice President Glass.
Well, thank you very much, President Albornoz. It is good to see you all, if not there in person, although in my chair, I think, is Dr. McKnight. And so I know it's in good hands this evening. But I'm Evan Glass. I'm one of the at-large members of the Montgomery County Council. I'm also the first LGBTQ plus member of the council. And, you know, I just appreciate the tone of this evening and what my friend Councilmember Rice just said about civic engagement. And I know you are all aware that we just recently had an election, and the ramifications of that election are felt nationwide, and votes are still being counted. But here in Montgomery County, we have a very well-functioning democracy, and you being part of this conversation tonight means that you are part of our democracy. And so I just want to thank you all for being part of this conversation, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Council Vice President Glass. We're going to get to the questions in just a minute. I'd now like to introduce Councilmember Sidney Katz, who is here as well. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you all for attending the forum. This is very important to all of us, whether you're in the chamber or whether you're virtual with us. For those of you who are lucky enough not to know me, I am Sidney Katz. I'm the council member for the 3rd District, and the 3rd District, though, has changed configuration because of this new election. It pretty much is the municipal boundaries of Rockville and Gaithersburg and Washington Grove, with a very little bit beyond. I serve on the Government Operations Committee, which is chaired by Councilmember Navarro, and serve with Councilmember Friedson, who you're going to hear from, I think, in a few seconds. And I am the chair of the Public Safety Committee, which I also serve with President Albornoz on that committee. I graduated from Montgomery County Public Schools, Gaithersburg High. I attended Montgomery College and graduated from the University of Maryland. I'm the former mayor of Gaithersburg, and I sincerely thank you for being here, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And Councilmember Friedson.
Good evening. Hi, everybody. It's great to join you virtually. I am Andrew Friedson. I represent District 1 on the County Council. I am wrapping up my first term and heading towards my second term. I'm glad to see that the student member of the Board of Education is sitting in my chair. I am sometimes referred to as the student member of the County Council, since I'm the youngest member of the County Council, but it's good to see that we've upgraded the talent significantly in that seat with Mr. Kim. So great to see you. Glad you are here. I am proud to represent District 1, which currently represents Bethesda, Potomac, Chevy Chase, North Bethesda, Kensington, Garrett Park, Friendship Heights, Poolsville, and some areas in between, essentially all of Western Maryland, from Potomac River to the railroad, from the DC line to the Frederick County line. That district is changing. As the districts are changing, we're adding 2 new members, so it'll largely come December be most of Bethesda, Potomac, and Chevy Chase. In southwestern Montgomery County, I serve on the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee with Councilmember Katz and Councilmember Navarro, as you heard, and also on the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee, and I also serve as the lead for Parks on the County Council. I'm local, born and raised. I went to MCPS my whole life, Wayside, Hoover, and Churchill. Go Bulldogs, and University of Maryland, go Terps. So I fully understand how important it is to get involved at a young age. My personal journey started in 5th grade, advocating for safer bus routes. And so I'm just really pleased that you're here and to see your engagement on these issues, and am so excited to hear your questions and your continued engagement as we move forward. So thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started now with the questions, and I'm going to turn it over to the student member of the board who has a question for me.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you know, the Board of Education is undergoing the process of building our budget for the 2023-2024 school year, allocating money from programming to our facilities. I wanted to ask you today how the Board of Education, MCPS, the council, community members, and students can collaborate to make sure that the financial needs of our students and schools are being met.
Well, thanks so much. Well, it starts with events like this, when we hear directly from students and what your interests are, what we are missing, or what opportunities may be out there. Also, working with parents is very critical, particularly now. I know our students face pressures that my generation could not have even possibly imagined. And so it's important for us to be able to provide any support that we can, whether it's through the school system itself and the incredible support services it provides to our students, or through departments like the Department of Recreation, the Department of Health and Human Services, or the many nonprofit organizations that provide incredible services directly within schools as well. So we are committed, as we have been under Councilmember Rice's leadership and this next council, to make sure we keep the legacy moving forward, because there is no greater treasure, there is no more important investment than our children and youth. And we know that, we recognize that, and we stand ready to keep that going. So thank you very much for the question. Jordan, I think I'm turning over to you to facilitate the next part of this.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Arvin, and thank you, Council President Albornoz. Up next is Bethesda Chevy Chase High School 11th grader John McCaffrey, who joins us in person. Hi, John. How you doing? I'm going to walk over to you, and I'll hand you the mic, and you can go ahead and ask your question for Council Vice President Glass, who joins us virtual. I'll hold the mic for you, okay?
Okay. Hold on. I have my question on my phone. Sorry.
I actually have it too right here for you if you need to see it.
All right. It's not going to be exactly on track, but I, as a MCPS student, as a user of both WMATA and Ride-On, I asked the Montgomery County Council what they're doing to provide non-personal motor vehicle options of transit and making sure they're viable and that it makes sense to use them, specifically for students as someone who uses a Metro bus to school every day.
And that's for you, Council Vice President Glass, who joins us virtually. Thank you. Thank you, John.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate the question. And, you know, we want to reduce our carbon emissions here in Montgomery County because we want to make sure that we have a green planet for all of you. And here in Montgomery County, cars and transportation emit 42% of all the greenhouse gases. So we got to cut that down. And when we think about greening the environment and cutting down the emissions, one of the best ways to do that is by supporting public transportation, as you note. And I'm glad that you take Ride-On and that you take Metro Bus. Those are two of the best ways to cut our greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the reasons that they're also really important, aside from fuel efficiency, is because they're affordable. And one of the things that I've been working on and leading is, you know, you all might not know this, but, you know, 3 years ago or so, we as a council made sure that our Ride-On and our Metro buses were free for all students. So when you're getting on the bus, you might not realize that it's free. I'm sure you do, but it didn't always be that way. And so we were encouraging you all to ride. And when we made it free, you all started riding more, 57% increase. And so we need to continue expanding that, right? But also, as you're walking to the bus stop, as you're walking to school, we need to make sure that our streets are safe for everybody. And unfortunately, right now, they're not safe. They're not safe for people walking. They're not safe for people bicycling. And they're also not safe for drivers. Just to this point alone, we're in the middle of November. We've unfortunately had 14 people killed on our roads here in Montgomery County this year, and we've had about 450 people who were injured. And so we got to do better so that you don't have to take the bus. You can walk if you want, But then there's also, I'll add one more thing, there are other ways that you can also get around in our community. We call them the last mile options. And they're things like scooters and the Bird and the Lime bikes and the scooters, as I said. And so we want to make sure that they're in areas where you all can get off the bus or just use that to get into downtown Bethesda, Silver Spring, Rockville, whatever area it might be in other parts of the county. So we want to make sure that you have all these different tools at your disposal so that you are not contributing to greenhouse gas emissions and you don't have to get a car. So John, I appreciate the question. And thank you for taking Metrobus.
Great. Thank you so much, John, and thank you, Council Vice President Glass. The next question will be virtual, and I'm going to go ahead and toss it over to my colleague, Mershai Salu, to moderate the virtual questions from students. Mershai, to you.
Thank you, Jordan, and good evening, everyone. Before we get started, I just have a quick message for our students who are asking their questions live on Zoom. Just keep your microphone muted until it is your turn to speak, and feel free to unmute yourself when it's your time to ask your question. Our first virtual question comes from Allison Sweeney from Poolesville High School for Councilmember Rice. Allison?
Yes, good evening, Councilmember Rice and Montgomery County Council members. I wanted to ask what avenues that students can get involved in with countywide leadership to engage with their policymakers.
Well, I'm sitting next to one way in which you can do that, which is to run for student member of the board. And I'm not sure if people know this or not, but the student member of the board actually gets $5,000 scholarship. $25,000. $25,000 scholarship. It's pretty good. And you get to serve in a leadership position and do some great things in terms of representing your student community with Montgomery County Public Schools. So something to think about, folks. But there's another one that we have that's here at the Montgomery County Council. In fact, she was just with us yesterday. We had council member for a day, Wandy from Montgomery Blair High School, who was selected as the council member for a day and sat here, right here, on this dais and asked a lot of questions and was very involved and engaged in leadership in terms of talking about affordable housing and what it is that she thinks we need to do when it comes to addressing the affordable housing crisis here in Montgomery County. The reality is that those are two positions, but I want to make sure that folks understand that you as an advocate can make change on your own without being in any one of these positions. As I said at the outset of this meeting, we are here to listen to you. The very first piece of legislation that I introduced as a Maryland state delegate was actually something that came from a high school senior right here in Montgomery County. She had come out and was being made fun of online. They had created a website about her, and she came to me and asked me to enact a bullying law, an anti-bullying law, that then became one of the strongest bullying bills in the nation. HB 199 is something that I passed in 2009 in the Maryland General Assembly. It is a state law that still to this day remains one of the strongest pieces of anti-bullying legislation. Not because of me, as an elected official, but because of a person just like you sitting in those seats, who cared enough to say that this is an issue that I think needs to be addressed. Leadership can happen at all levels, and so Allison, it's certainly something where there are opportunities with positions, but there are also opportunities just by you speaking out about what matters to you and your community.
Great response. Just real quick, Jordan, Board of Education President Brenda Wolf would like to make a comment as well.
Yes, in addition to having Mr. Arvin, who is on the Board of Education and who, by the way, has full voting rights and brings the perspective of students, we have a couple of student-led board meetings a year where we meet with the leadership of the student body, and that's very important. Also, we take testimony at every board meeting, and our students have just been magnificent at coming out. The other day at the CIP meeting, I see you out there. Yes, I do. You were very active, along with, it seemed like the entire room full of students were very active the other day. So do come out, provide testimony. It can be written. It can be submitted via video or audio, and come out to some of the student leadership meetings that we have with the students.
I'll just mention very quickly, I had the opportunity to meet some of you in the cafeteria downstairs, and many of you participate in the student government associations for your schools. That is a great way to get engaged in many different ways, not just within your schools, but it also provides you with leadership skills and kind of helps you figure out how some of this stuff works, and it can get complicated at times. So that's another great way of being engaged.
Great, thank you so much. Up next is Wooten High School 11th grader Nico Durazio with an in-person question for whomever would like to answer. Nico, can you go ahead and, there you are. Okay, I'll go ahead and hold the mic for you while you ask your question, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. So how do you take students' voice into account when making policy and fiscal decisions for Montgomery County Public Schools, such as allocating funds for rebuilding schools and renovating schools in the CIP budget? Thank you.
So I'll talk about that, and then Dr. McKnight should speak to that as well. So the CIP, for those of you that don't know, refers to our Capital Improvement Program. And the CIP is a multi-billion-dollar budget that funds all of the county government buildings. So that includes libraries, police stations, and of course our schools. And we have more than 250 schools over our entire system. We are, I think, the 14th largest school district in the country at this point, and many of those schools are aging. I went to Whitman, and Wooten was one of our rivals, and so we played you guys in basketball and soccer in the 90s, and I know the school could stand to be renovated. It's a tough balancing act every year in the CIP in trying to figure out which projects to move forward, but your voices, like here tonight and through your parents, but also our teachers associations, make a big difference in the advocacy for moving schools up. And we work closely with our school system on making decisions on which projects need to move forward faster than others. But I'll turn it over to Dr. McKnight to make a few comments on this as well.
Thank you, Council President. So what a great question. I think you all actually some examples of exactly how we do that. The other night, I believe it was this week, we actually had a hearing, and last week, about our CIP budget and what the priorities were going to be. And so our first responsibility is to listen here, and the second one then is to follow up. This past week, again, I'll point to the example of there was so much testimony regarding priorities that the students saw that should be included in the CIP. And so within 24 hours, the staff was right there, particularly at Wooten High School, less than 24 hours, actually, following up on exactly what those examples that you shared were that were of concerns to you. So we need to listen, and then we need to follow up swiftly, which is what we do. And then the third thing that we do is then come back after we've gone out, spoken with you, made an assessment of the situation, and then come back and talk with our Board of Education members and the staff and others to see if there's anything that we need to adjust or reconsider based on our assessment of the situation. So I just want to highlight the most influential way that you impact this process is to come out and share so that we have an awareness of what's happening, and then we then come out and follow up. And as you, of course, know, we involve our students in our operating budget conversation, which is why we made it a priority to increase the number of students in our conversations around the operating budget. And why do we do that? Well, while we have an operating budget and the CIP budget, we know that they actually impact one another in so many different ways, because most of what we need to put in the operating budget needs to fit squarely within the vision of what we have happening within our CIP, which are the facilities and buildings. So engaging you, involving you, and most importantly, telling us, which you do, what makes you accessible to these venues. Some of you actually came and followed me after one of our recent meetings and said, you know what, it's really helpful if you can make these meetings virtual so that more of us can attend, and it's actually better if you have them after school hours. And we, of course, want you in school and focus in your classrooms. And so then we then look at our processes and practice and procedures and see how we adjust based on your feedback. So keep providing the feedback and being present and engaged in the process.
I'll just end with this, just give you a specific example, because the board and Dr. McKnight still have to advocate before the council, with regards to different projects. And they advocated strongly 2 years ago for the renovation to South Lake Elementary School. But the council, in trying to make all the numbers work, was not able to fund that project in the year that the school system had requested. Well, the parents, working with community-based organizations that were advocating for them, helped make sure the council understood the need for that priority. And so South Lake ended up getting funded, in large part because of the community advocacy from the parents, the families, and the students. So it does work.
Great, thank you so much. The next few questions will actually be virtual again, guys, and I'm going to go ahead and toss it back over to my colleague, Mashai Salu, to moderate the virtual questions from students. Mashai, back to you.
Thank you, Jordan. Our next question comes from Mayuk Dantuluri from Nielsville Middle School for Councilmember Katz. And he might be joining us soon.
I didn't ask to ask a question.
Go ahead.
I didn't ask to.
Oh, they're saying that they didn't ask to ask a question. So we do have the question, I think, written.
Maybe we can go ahead and read this out loud.
Yeah.
Is this, how can students easily earn funds to help their school? And this is for Councilmember Katz. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the question. It made me stop and think of a best answer, and it was said what is an easy way to do that, to get, and some are easier than others. And of course, fundraisers, and that's what we're talking about in some cases, but fundraisers can also be fun raisers, not just a way to receive dollars, but to receive some real camaraderie amongst everyone there. And because of the question, I decided I was going to do a little research. I checked with my staff, and you probably couldn't tell, but I haven't been in middle school for a few years. So to actually be a student, I've been to many a middle school. And but then with my staff and others, I came up with a few ideas, and some of these are not going to be anything that's shocking in any way. But the first thing that everyone should keep in mind is that it's helpful to talk to a parent, a teacher, a guidance counselor, or other trusted adults about your idea for raising money to make sure that it really is a good idea. And the other thing to keep in mind is to try to keep things to be successful as possible. You can check with, in this case, this person was at Nielsville Middle School, but check with the PTSA or the Booster Club, because they also have ideas. But some of the ideas, as I Googled them, and my staff Googled, you can do penny wars, and that's when people will bring their pennies literally and drop them off in a bottle, and literally thousands of dollars have been raised that way. You can have things that are academic and spellathons, readathons. You can have bake sales and talent shows, multicultural fairs, movie nights, restaurant spirit night, where the restaurant will donate part of their proceeds as well, trivia nights, and of course the traditional car washes, which many schools have done and many students have done. And I'm sure that if you talk to your classmates and friends, they're going to have ideas as well. Good luck, and please remember, as Council President mentioned, it's important to raise funds directly, but it's important to remind the elected officials, some of whom are sitting up here and on virtual this evening, to remind them of how important funds are for everyone and see if we can help out as well. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Dr. McKnight would like to add something?
Thank you, Council President. I wanted to just circle back to the importance of advocacy in your school buildings when it comes down to fundraising. Oftentimes, I'll run into students who say, we're fundraising for this, and I'll ask the question, well, have you met with your administration to see if there's funding that already exists for this? Or just like the question was just about, how do you think about your influence in CIP for buildings? Same mentality should apply within the school building. A school sets out the beginning of the year thinking about how it would use its independent activity funds in all these ways to address the needs of the school. But sometimes things happen and it shifts in terms of priorities. So I continue to encourage you as students to engage with your school administrations, your SG advisors and others, and sit down first and have the conversation to say, is there an avenue of funding that already exists within our school in which we can shift up a priority if needed? And I always say there's always good, healthy competition when you do fundraisers. Just if you will indulge me for just a moment, when I was a middle school teacher, I remember, and I think it was Penny Wars, and I was a SG advisor as well, and I said, well, 6th grade always wants to be better than 7th grade. 7th grade always wants to be better than 8th grade, and how do we create this healthy competition? And we decided to actually decorate the school by color based on who was raising the pennies, and we actually got to the end of the school, and there was nowhere else for any of those construction links to go representing the color because, everybody wanted their grade level to be the best. Some of those things just apply, and again, that idea came from students. So continue to have those conversations with each other and engage and create different ways that you can fundraise and engage everybody in why that fundraiser is important and why it's necessary for your school. Thank you.
Can I
Yes, of course. President Wolf.
But I do think, as Council President Albornoz said, it's important that you come to the council and advocate, because there are a number of things that are able to be funded at some schools that are not able to be funded at other schools, and equity becomes a concern. So if there is an activity that you think is important that schools should be involved in, then I think we should be spreading the money around pretty evenly, and you should be coming to the council and to the Board of Education and advocating for that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. The next question is also virtual, so I'm going to go ahead and toss back to Mershai again to read that question out loud. Thank you, Mershai. To you.
Thank you, Jordan. Our next question comes from Dinabu Bukum from Paintbrush High School for Councilmember Friedson, and I'll be reading their question. They ask, what are your plans to make information on the latest updates on county policy and legislative initiatives more accessible and of wider knowledge to the public?
Well, thank you so much for this question. It is really the $1.1 million question of how to reach our 1.1 million residents, which is always a challenge. The new council, as we enter into the next term, is really focusing on a strategic multicultural communications plan with the goal of reaching residents who have historically been underrepresented in the legislative process. And we have an incredibly diverse community, and we need to make sure that we're digging deep into that community. I did want to give a shout out and acknowledgement. Our colleague, Councilmember Nancy Navarro, has really been pushing this for many, many years. Her service, 14 years on the council, is coming to an end. She's cycling off. But we are really fortunate that many of the efforts that have been undertaken over the last several years are going to be continuing, and we're really working hard on that. Sonia Healy and her team in our communications office are continuing to do that. We've actually hired somebody from Councilmember Navarro's office, our colleague Berta Sesosima, who has been working on this issue on an ad hoc basis in an individual council office on behalf of many of us. But now we're really going to formalize it and make sure that the council is focused on it. You see several of our colleagues who are helping us put this very event on tonight, and very much is part of that overall effort, which is a major commitment from the council. We understand that we have to engage residents in their terms and on their turf. And so we're committed to holding public hearings and town halls and listening sessions, not just here at the county council, which we want to do in moments like this so that you have access to the county council, but also in locations throughout the county. We've started to do that work We're deeply committed to doing more and to digging deeper into our community. We're looking at doing things like we're doing tonight, a hybrid meeting where we're allowing for virtual participation. Look how many of you have joined tonight virtually who might otherwise not have joined if it was only in person. And so we're looking at continuing to provide more and more opportunities to do that. We're really excited to see the overwhelming response that we've gotten, and we're looking at expanding the type of social media sites and the type of venues that we're going on heading into 2023, including TikTok, including WhatsApp, and many others. And we'd love to hear from you. You know more about the technology, frankly, than any of us do. And so we talked about how you can engage, and then we talked about how we can engage, and really you can help us to engage better by telling us where you are, how you're communicating, where you get your information. And we are totally committed to doing everything that we can to making sure that we're providing information to young people and to communities all across and throughout the county. And so any ideas that you have beyond what we're doing, we're all ears. We've changed a lot in the last few years. We've used the COVID changes that have forced us to do things differently and use it as an opportunity to engage in different ways. And we're looking forward to doing that more and more. And we'd love to hear from you the options and ideas and opportunities that are out there that you think would be helpful for you to engage more with us.
Thank you,
President
Council.
Wolf wanted to mention something as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say Councilmember Friedson gave an excellent answer, and communication is always a challenge for Montgomery County Public Schools also. So we would be very interested in hearing about what you think would work. And I have received some very interesting ideas from students, so please, if you have some, send them in, because we now have a fully staffed communications unit, I believe, and they're in the process of revisiting this issue.
Great, thank you so much. Again, back to you, Marshai. I believe the next question is virtual as well. Marshai, to you.
Yes, thank you, Jordan. Our next question comes from Elias Bernstein from Churchill High School. They ask, what are the council's thoughts on altering school start times to better support students' health?
Well, good question. So I have 4 kids that range in ages from 14 to 6, and morning is a little tough in our house because 3 of my 4 kids are not morning people, to say the least. So I know this is a tough issue because it's a balancing act. We've got a lot of extracurricular activities. We have school bus drivers that in some instances travel from as far as West Virginia to come and do their jobs here in Montgomery County. And so it's tough balancing because it's not just as simple as moving the school times. There's a lot of other things that factor into how all of that works. But I think studies have been pretty conclusive that any and all opportunities to give you guys more sleep helps you and helps your teachers and helps everyone in the entire system, including your parents. And so I'll defer to my colleagues in MCPS who I know have been working on this issue, but I know that the council is very open to recommendations from both our school board and the school system. And if it is a funding issue that would make it easier to be able to have later start times to allow you all to sleep in a little bit more, we would certainly be very open to that. But Dr. McKnight?
Yeah, thank you, Council President. So great question, and this is something that Montgomery County has gone through evolutions of. I believe it was about 6-7 years ago was the last time the school system had done a study around it and had shifted things, as a matter of fact, and then there was a shift back. And I think that was one of the big acknowledgments of how when you make a shift in changing school time, there's so many other systems that work around that. And so we just have to be cognizant of what all of those things are. I will tell you one thing that we're focusing on that will make the conversation even richer. So, you know, I have a 10-year-old, and one of the reasons I'm most hesitant to give him a cell phone, although he's been asking for about 3 years now, is why? I think that cell phone is going to interfere with some of the things that I actually want him to do. Like now, you know, he does have an iPad, but he has to bring it into my room at a certain time to make sure it's there. And a few times I caught him being very sleepy in the morning. I was like, geez, why are you so tired? Then I noticed there was something that was missing. I share all of that because I think we have to look at this issue holistically. And so when we're thinking about students and wellness, we started out the conversation and have entertained questions from our community around school start time, because it is around how can we create better conditions for our students to be well. And we know that sleep is a part of that. But we also want to complement that wellness with all of the other things that we think are important, which is, so how do we make sure we maintain things within our lifestyle that complement us being well? If we are going to get more sleep, then what are the things that we want to have in place to support that? How are we then managing use of technology and all of those pieces? What are some good mindfulness activities and things like that that we've learned that actually help students decompress so that when it is time to go to sleep, it's actually restful sleep. And so those are the types of things that we're looking at and studying, so that if we do make a decision to make a recommendation or move forward, we want it to be inclusive of overall, how can our students be well individuals? And I believe there are many other components added to starting school time that we have to look at to address this from a comprehensive perspective. And I apologize, Aiden, for giving that example.
That was great. Thank you so much, Dr. McKnight. We do have one more question virtually, or another question virtually, so I'm going to go ahead and toss it back to Rashai again to ask that question. Rashai, to you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Jocelyn Silverstein from Northwest High School, and they ask, how do you plan to address mental health concerns in the community? For Councilmember Albornoz or anybody that wants to answer.
Sure, I'll start, and I know Councilmember Rice has some thoughts on this as well. So, you know, I referred to it earlier, and I don't want to gloss over this. It's been hard for everybody, but especially you all, to process what has happened the last few years. The world basically was put on hold, and at a time where you all needed to be with each other, you couldn't, and it was tough to make those decisions. But in an effort to keep everyone safe, we felt it was important. But now that we are past that incredibly difficult time, we want to make sure that we do everything that we can for you all to be able to process everything you all went through. And so the council has done several things. With the leadership of Councilmember Navarro, in partnership with our school system, we are working aggressively to add a high school wellness center to all of our high schools, right. Not just some of them, but all of them, so that there's a resource, someplace you all can go if you are needing to be able to share some of your concerns and issues with somebody outside of the school system. Works with the school system, but outside of the school system. So we're doing that. But one of the areas that I know we need to do an even better job of is at the middle school level. Middle school is a tough time. I still remember middle school. I got bullied when I was in 6th and 7th grade. And in 7th grade, it was actually pretty bad. And I still remember it. And it shouldn't have to take really tough circumstances for you all to look for help. So we want to do more at the middle school level, and my colleagues and I are committed to doing just that. And I'll turn it over to Councilmember Rice to share some of his thoughts in this space, and then anybody else that would like to as well, because this is a really important topic, we know.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Council President. And I just want to say that I really want to applaud Montgomery County Public Schools in their Be Well 365 campaign that really highlights a lot around the health and well-being of all of you, and that healthiness applies to physical as well as to mental health. And we know that it has significant impacts on your ability to be able to just do your daily duties as a student, which is to sit there and learn. And a person can't function in the classroom if they're not healthy. And that applies both physically and mentally. Every Mind is an organization that works with us here in Montgomery County to provide a resource. And so for anyone out there, you can just look up and just Google Every Mind. But their number, and I just want to put this out there because I do think it's important, is 301-738-2255. Again, that's 301-738-2255. If you know of a person, and So my daughter came to me one night and said to me, "Dad, I'm worried about one of my friends." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "I don't know. She just doesn't sound right." And unfortunately, we found out that this young lady was contemplating suicide. It is imperative that you speak up, that you say something, because it gives us the opportunity to intervene and provide the services that are necessary. Do not take it for granted. Do not think that a person is joking. Do not think that, well, maybe they're just having a bad day. Please take this seriously. It does matter, and we do care. We care about each and every one of you, and we care about your lives. We care about your success. We care about your well-being. We care about you being happy. It sounds kind of silly, but it's the absolute truth. There is no reason for you to go to school and not be happy. That should be there for each and every one of you. And so if you're not feeling that way, if you feel that something's just not right, please say something to someone or call the number. Teachers, administrators, staff are there in each and every one of your schools. Your parents are there. And if you don't feel comfortable utilizing one of those, there are always national resources as well that you can reach out to. Going online, we have a text line to where you can text if you don't feel like talking to someone. That also is on the website. Please make sure that you take this seriously for you and for your friends, because it does matter, and we've lost too many students already. We don't need to lose another.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Rice, for those important resources. Up next, we have Kiana Rahimi with an in-person question. Kiana, how you doing? I'm going to go ahead and walk over to you and hold the mic for you. You can ask your question. This is going to be an open question for whomever would like to answer.
How can we as students find out about MCPS decisions on CIP spending? As you may know, Wooten High School's renovation have repeatedly been pushed back. How can students receive regular updates about what is being done for the school and when? How can we find out how decisions are made about prioritizing schools for renovation in the county?
Thank you for that question. So, very good insight. The first thing I'll say is whenever we release our CIP, we actually have worked very hard to make sure this information gets out, because there's so many people invested in what's in it, because there are so many priorities across the system. So we send out the information to every school to make sure they can make it available to their communities, and we also post all the information on the website. Now, with that said, I will be the first to acknowledge that we're 300 and something pages. Sam, that I think you said 328? 288, okay, close to 300. That's a lot of pages, and you know, some will take the time, as she did, to go through and read all 288, but some won't. And so what's most important? And we know what's most important is, do I see my school or my interest in that CIP? So what we have done is we then hold our public hearings, so that's the opportunity to talk about what your concerns are when you don't see the thing that you think should be a priority in the CIP, and have conversations with us about it, so that we can better understand, you know, what the complexities are there. I also will say this is an opportunity for us, and I've been listening and thinking about this. As we have the budget advisory for our operating budget, I've been listening and thinking about our CIP, and I actually believe in the future a good pathway for us would be able to bring in a convening a group of student representatives and others to just sit down and have a conversation about it. That's what I'm gleaning from what I'm hearing from you in terms of the feedback. I feel like we've done a really good job with that with the operating budget. We've built our students' capacity, our community's capacity, and continue to do so around that. But I keep hearing there is a need to engage with the information more, to understand the process and understand why it is. So that is something I will commit to making sure that we continue to do in the future in a different way.
That is a great idea, and I think would really help. I'll also say that, you know, social media, I have mixed feelings about social media. I'll just be upfront about that. But there was a student at one of these sessions when I was still the director of the recreation department about 5 years ago, who on social media posted regularly pointing out different deficiencies within her school. And she kind of played with it a little bit. It was funny. But it got a ton of followers, and it built a lot of momentum. And, you know, as elected officials and policymakers, it's a juggling act, trying to figure out what we're going to fund and when we're going to fund it, because there's always more need than there is money to meet it. But, you know, we're human beings, and we do, you know, when we hear repeatedly from folks regarding certain issues, it makes it impossible for it to be out of sight, out of mind. And so I really want to thank you for your strong advocacy on behalf of Wootton. That's a perfect example of how consistent advocacy, I think, really does ultimately make a difference.
Great, that's some very important information. Thank you so much for those answers. We're going to go ahead now and open this up for some open questions here in person. We're going to maybe take 2 or 3 guys. We're going to also do that virtually with Mershai, my colleague. So how about with a raise of hands, who has a brief question that they would like to ask live here in person? Okay. So when I come over to you, I'm going to have you say your first and last name. You can go ahead and stand up, what school you go to, and then you can ask your question, okay? What's your name?
My name is Samantha Ross, and I'm a sophomore at Montgomery Blair High School.
Hi, Samantha.
So my question is a little more open, although I think Mr. Glass might chime in on this, is what's the plan to really make sure that our transportation makes sure that we're connecting the parts of Montgomery County that are sometimes more left out, such as Upper County and West County, to our real hubs, Montgomery College, Rockville, here, the County Council, via those public transportation systems?
Whoever would like to answer can answer. Thank you, Samantha.
Council Vice President Glass.
Well, Samantha, thank you for the question. I say amen because you clearly get it, right? You know, we talk about schools, and we're here with MCPS and with all of you students, and we know how important school is to your future. But the reality is, once you're out of school, once you're out of high school, the biggest factor to determine your economic success is whether or not you have access to transportation. Because you might have a high school degree, you might have an associate's or 4-year university degree, but if you can't get to that job, it doesn't matter what educational curriculum or background you have. And that's why transportation is so important. And so if you go to Blair, you know that you're right on Route 29, Colesville Road, and we have to do better by having a real bus rapid transit there. And that we know that there are more people who are without cars in our Black and brown communities. We have more people without cars in East County and Up County. And the reality is, I'm going to bring it back to the environment as well. If we don't have a good transportation system and affordable housing, mind you, then we're going to have people continue to move out to Howard County and Frederick County, and they're going to have no options but drive in their cars. And then they're going to complain that Colesville Road is clogged and 270 is clogged and the Beltway is clogged. And you know what? Because it's clogged, we need to expand those things. And we need to widen the Beltway in 270. And so you get it. And I appreciate everybody who gets it, that we need to improve our public transportation. And so we need to make sure that Metro is funded. We need to continue expanding more public transportation. And we need to have more affordable housing and more jobs in our community so people can actually live here and they don't have to keep driving from other places. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Just very quickly, I wanted to let you know from a federal government perspective, and I told you I was just at the White House earlier today, one of the things that was highlighted was the $1.6 billion that the Biden administration has put to double clean buses throughout this nation. That means that the larger our fleet grows, the more our routes can go to. I wish that some of these things weren't attached to money, and it was just the will of the body and the people to say, hey, we can do this. The reality is a lot of it is attached to funding. And so by having the federal government to help local jurisdictions like Montgomery County when it comes to increasing our fleet, that's the answer. As I represent the Up County, I know what you're talking about. When it's Damascus, when it's Germantown, and it takes an hour to get from one end of Germantown to the other via a ride-on bus, that's unacceptable. And what does that mean for those individuals who don't have any other choice? Just like you heard the gentleman who rides the bus every day to and from school. we have to do better. And so by having better infrastructure, by having better funding, we're going to have a better system. So,
thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question. Thank you very much, and thank you for the question. I've been intrigued by monorail, and I don't know how much you've actually followed this. When I first heard of it, and it was a private developer that's talking about doing it or trying to do it, when I first heard of it, I thought, this is going to be like Disney, and it's just going to be some kind of a system that's just really not going to amount to anything. And candidly, the more I looked into it, the more intrigued I've become. The current governor and the administration from the state of Maryland has really not applauded it. The fact that we are going to have a new governor, Governor Moore, we think maybe there could be a possibility that we can continue the conversations. But what it does is what is being proposed is it would come from Frederick to Shady Grove Red Line, that it would not take up any lanes on 270. And Councilmember Glass mentioned about the fact that it gets more and more clogged. People say, therefore, you should widen it. You wouldn't have to widen 270 if more people could use mass transit. And this would not take away lanes. The only cost to the taxpayer as such would be that the pier that the monorail would sit on, the post that the monorail would sit on, would be the land would be owned by the state of Maryland, but everything else would be the person who was using the monorail would be paying for. It was my understanding that it would cost no more from Frederick to get to Shady Grove as it would be for someone who's on Metro for that cost. So it's affordable. And it would be something that people are not going to use mass transit unless it is convenient and unless it is safe, and we need to have all of those things, and it can be that as well. So we need to continue the dialogue. We need to do it as quickly as we possibly can, and we need to make certain that not only for someone to say no to us, but to figure out why they are saying no so we can get to the yes. But thank you for the question. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, that was a great question. Do we have any more students here? Okay, I see a lot of hands going on. I think I saw your hand go up first, and I saw yours as well. I'll be right to you. You too. Let's see if we can get you over here. So go ahead and tell me your name, your school, and your question, okay? How you doing tonight?
How are you? I'm Olivia Tinley. I'm a sixth grader at Benjamin Banneker Middle School. And a big problem that I've had within MCPS as a student is the safety on buses. Kids are constantly fighting on buses, throwing things out of windows, and causing harm to other students on the buses. And I feel as though that's a big problem because it's not okay that kids are getting hurt on buses and having to come home and explain to their parents, well, somebody did this to me on the bus, and because administrators cannot get on the bus and ride home with us, so they don't understand what happens on the buses besides students' testimonies. So what do you plan on doing to help make buses more safe for students?
Thank you for that. So first, let me say the bus ride is so important. Just a moment ago, we were talking about social emotional wellness. And so the bus ride and what that experience like sets the stage for the type of day that I think a student is going to have. And so we want the bus ride to be one that is peaceful, one that is supportive, and one that is positive. So there are a few things that I'll say about that. One, now, the part about riding the bus, oh yes, a principal can ride a bus. I rode a bus as a principal. Actually, I rode a bus as superintendent. Okay, I tend to show up on buses from time to time, just to show the importance of that. And I think we do that and we do it because we want to be able to model, to share that we set the expectation of what we expect for our students. And so I encourage that because I do it and I want others to do it. The second thing is really spending the time to work with our students, and it comes back to any of these issues, whether it's bullying, fighting on a bus, or whatever it is. What's causing the problem? And trying to figure out how do we get to being proactive in that conflict resolution. Well, I mean, I guess it's possible for somebody to wake up on the wrong side of the bed, as they say, and just be in a bad mood and get on the bus. But we know that normally it happens from other conflict that's brewing, you know, like from the day before or something that happened on social media. So the more we know about what that is, and you can report it to a teacher or to the school, then we can be proactive before it becomes an issue on the bus. So we're really dependent upon our students to be able to communicate with us and share with us what those issues are so that we can address them and address them timely so that they don't become issues that are on the bus. And then we very much exercise and share with our students the expectations that we have for riding the bus. You help us attract bus drivers. We need them. We need them. We need them driving you to school every single day, and we need them enjoying the work that they do. And I got to tell you, it's not the easiest thing when your back is turned towards 50 students or more, and you know you got to depend on everybody to follow the expectations. And so we engage our bus drivers in all types of things, incentives to encourage positive bus behavior. I mean, I've talked with bus drivers who talked about how, you know, they have relationships with the schools and extend things like PBIS, positive behavior intervention systems that they have within the school, sharing that on the bus in terms of expectations there to reinforce positive positive expectations to students around behavior. And then when people exhibit behavior on the buses that compromises the environment for everybody, we take that seriously. So we do have the conversation about the bus being the space in which we expect for those rules to be followed and make it a respectful environment. But I'll go back to it starts with us having the information so that we can be proactive, and we depend greatly on you to help us do that, and working through conflict resolution and everything else that creates this type of conflict that we know students experience, but we want to help become a part of solving.
Thank you, Dr. McKnight. Councilmember Rice reminded me that we did provide some additional funding for more cameras on buses,
Yes.
Which is obviously important, hopefully as a deterrent. But first, shout out to our bus drivers.
Yes.
These are hard jobs, and we don't have enough of them. So we really do want to thank our bus drivers for stepping forward. So I'll mention just two couple things really quick. So when I worked for the recreation department, we were intentional about including bus drivers in the training that our frontline youth workers received. And I think that to the degree to which, if we aren't already, providing some of that de-escalation training and support for bus drivers, I think that would be important. But I want to say something else, and I want to go back to something I said earlier. I mentioned that I was bullied in middle school. Well, there was an incident when I was in 7th grade where I got beaten up on a school bus going to Pyle Middle School, and I had a bloody nose. It was embarrassing. It was awful. And there was a student on that bus named Rachel Rosenthal, who I will never forget. Going to try not to get emotional because I'll never forget what she did. She got off on my bus stop 3 stops before hers because she wanted to make sure I was okay. She literally walked me home. And I will never forget the act of humanity that young woman showed at a time where I was as down as I've ever been in my entire life. So each of us has a collective opportunity, and I'm not saying to step in if there's a fight, because you got to be very careful about things like that. But what I am saying is that there are other ways that we can provide support for our students and our peers. We can help uplift them. And if we see something, we've got to say something. So please don't be afraid to report something you have seen to an administrator, to your teacher. It is our responsibility as adults to take that information very seriously and do something with it. So thank you for that question. And I am sorry if any of you are experiencing this right now, because I know personally how difficult it is. So just let us know how we can help, and we are going to try to do that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for these great questions. I did see a few more hands. Okay, we have some more time. I saw these students here. I'm going to call on them, guys, and then we'll try to get to as many people as we can because we still have virtual. How you doing? You can go ahead and stand up. Tell me your name, what school you go to, okay?
I'm Alicia Spencer from St. John the Baptist School.
Nice. What grade are you in?
6th grade. I have a question. So my family's having me walk home sometimes now because I live close to my school, and some of them are a little bit scared because of the kidnappings and stuff that happens sometimes. And I want to make it so they aren't scared anymore. Is there a way you can do that? And how would you do that?
It's a very good question. Whomever would like to answer.
Sure. So first, thank you so much for your question. That was a fantastic question. And a couple of my kids go to Holy Redeemer, and we play you guys in sports. And so I just, the safety and security of our students is like the most important thing that we can do as adults and as government officials. And we work closely with our police department, and we are making sure that if there's any concern or information that's out there, there's coordination between all of our schools and our police department, who are in constant communication every day to make sure that we are doing everything possible to keep you guys safe. And during those times when you are going to and from schools, our Montgomery County Police Department adjusts their schedule of their police officers to make sure that more of those officers are out ensuring that you all are safe. Now we're at a time of year where it gets dark at 5 o'clock at night, which is kind of crazy because it feels like midnight at 7 o'clock. And so if you're participating in an after-school program or a sports team or a dance program or any other program after school, chances are pretty high it's going to be dark when you are going home. And so we do want to encourage students, again, if you see something, report something. And I am going to put the chair of our Public Safety Committee on the spot and ask Councilmember Katz to share from his perspective, from a public safety perspective, his thoughts.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate being on the spot because that's exactly what we need to do. I know that in order for us to be safe, we need to work together, and that means that each student should not be necessarily walking by themselves. You should certainly be in areas that you don't cut through the woods or whatever. You need to have people see where you're walking, and so many times I see parents walking with their students, with their children. I also see in many cases people who will make certain that we understand. We've all heard the expression, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, the village needs to make certain that it's watching not only for their own children, but for every child. And that's exactly what we need to continue to do. If there is an absolute, if there is a concern, doesn't have to be an absolute concern. If there is a concern, you should call the police to let them know of your problem, and so that they can be of assistance as well. I can tell you, as a person who went to Montgomery County Public Schools, I always knew that there was someone in our neighborhood that would help us if we ran into a problem. Gaithersburg, I grew up in Gaithersburg. It was a much smaller place than it is today. But you knew everybody where they lived. It was their neighbors. So I think that in itself, communication and discussion through so that each person who lives in the various houses is a big help. And of course, there's neighborhood watch as well. Thanks.
Great. That was great. Thank you so much, Councilmember Katz. We do have time for one more question in person, y'all. I know it's a lot of hands raised. You guys can be writing these questions and get some answers, but I did see this young student here. You can go ahead and stand up. We're going to have a quick question with a quick answer, and we're going to toss it to virtual, okay? Go ahead and tell me your name and what school you go to, okay?
Hi, my name is Leo, and I'm a 7th grader at Bedlam Middle School. I'm a part of the Rec Extra Recreation program there, and I like it a lot. My club focuses on leadership and service. My question is there a way to expand and better inform youth of SSL opportunities in our communities?
Thank you. Whomever would like to answer. Thank you for that question.
Well, great question, Leona. I enjoyed meeting you in the cafeteria earlier, and you had your question in hand, and I'm glad you got a chance to ask it. So first, SSL is such an important program, and I know Montgomery County Public Schools treats it very seriously. It's not just a box that we check. It is built intentionally to make sure that you all have an opportunity to help our community in some meaningful way. Whether that's being at this session tonight to have your voices heard so that we as policymakers can make decisions, or volunteering for a nonprofit organization or a community-based organization. We've got great service learning opportunities across the board. So I'll yield to my colleagues in Montgomery County Public Schools, and actually, if you want to take this one to talk a little bit about SSL hours, Mr. Kim, and just your experience with it and how you have found out as a student other opportunities that are out there.
Yes, thank you. And of course, we know that extending opportunities to earn your service hours to students is again, not only those service hours, but extending the opportunity to be involved in your community through service, through providing your ideas to the council here today, and otherwise contributing. You know, in our community, we have a wide variety of ways to be involved, from student leadership and student government opportunities to working with our local nonprofit organizations. And in the back of our room, we are joined by Michelle Cherry, who works very closely with many of our students around student service learning. And you know, from just in your own school building to traveling across the county to be involved, those opportunities are out there. You know, in my time as a student, I've had the pleasure to work very closely with our countywide SGA. And this is an organization that provides those SSL opportunities and provides opportunities to students across MCPS to have their voice heard, to advocate to our school system, and make meaningful progress and change in our school system. So exploring all these opportunities and finding a community even to stick with you from as young as 6th grade all the way until you're a senior, you know, there's a plethora of opportunities out there to explore.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and toss it over to virtual. We have about 9 minutes left, guys. We're almost at the end. We have a lot of virtual questions. Rashad, I'm going to toss it to you for a few virtual questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. We have a few questions coming through the chat. Sebastian Martin asks, does MCPS have any plans to make bike rakes? To whomever wants to answer.
Can you repeat that last part again? Sorry.
Does MCPS have any plans to make bike rakes?
Bike racks.
For the school. Okay, so we're talking about bike racks. We actually already have bike racks at some of our schools, where we have a number of students riding their bikes to school, and we want to continue to encourage that. It allows us to have a nice, healthy way to get our energy going before coming to school, and I'm hoping to bike in one day myself with students. So yes, we definitely already have that existing. And then I want to say to any of our students who feel like you don't have bike racks at your school, and there are a number of students who are biking in the school, please let your leadership at your school know so that we can make sure the school has what it needs, especially in the spirit of us encouraging students to ride their bikes in.
I'll note just really quick to expand that even further. The county actually is working on a bike master plan. What that means is we want to make it easier and more accessible for people to be able to ride their bikes, not just for recreation purposes, but to and from work, to and from school, to and from different activities. And as Council Vice President Glass noted earlier, too many people have lost their lives, many of which are bicyclists, because it isn't as safe as it should be to be able to ride your bike right now. But we're working on that, and we're spending money on it too.
Great, Rashad, did we have one more question virtual?
Yes. Emily asks, are you planning to increase the quality of school lunches?
It's always the question. It's always the question.
I think that was Emily's question. I hope Emily, if you were not involved in the Taste of MCPS this past spring, I'm going to say she should make sure she emails me with her name so that we can include her in the Taste for MCPS this year. I mentioned that program because we heard so much from our community, quite frankly, and our students about the quality of school lunch during the past 2 years when we wanted to acknowledge the need and help feed our entire community during the pandemic. But we were also challenged by supply chain and a number of other things that I think quite frankly impacted the quality of the meals. We got that feedback and you gave it to us repeatedly and we heard you. And so we actually heard some of the specific things about meals, which is that we wanted them to be options provided vegetarian. We wanted to make sure that there were a number of different meals catering to culture needs. And so the Taste of MCPS was all about how do we create new menu items that you taste and test and tell us what's good and what's not, that we're now including in our menus within our schools. And so we continue to monitor that and going to continue to get that feedback from you, and every year hopefully continue to test those meals and bring different meals in to improve the quality of meals, but most importantly, not just the quality of them, but make sure we improve the options. So yes, always a work in progress. I think we're miles ahead from where we were before, but still miles ahead to go as we continue to interact with you and get the feedback. So thank you so much for all of you who've participated in the Taste of MCPS, and we look forward to you continuing to participate in that program.
Great.
Thank you, Dr. McKnight. I toss it back to you, Jordan.
Thank you so much, Marshai, and thank you, Dr. McKnight. Well, guys, that concludes the questions we have this evening. Thank you all for joining us. Right now, my colleagues are going to be putting up slides. If you could go ahead and put your attention to the screens here, those slides with contact information for the different partner organizations that has joined us this evening in English and Spanish. Please feel free to take a picture of the information you guys will be seeing soon. We'll also be putting up slides right now for your SSL hours. That's why y'all came, right? You guys want your SSL hours? Okay, I know that's okay. So it's going to be up on the screen right now. I know on Zoom you're going to see your SSL hours on Zoom. That'll be in English and Spanish. Students will have until 5 p.m. You guys want to hear this important information tomorrow, 5 p.m., to complete the SSL Reflection Google form. If you have any questions, please reach out to Ms. Shella Sherry, Ms. Donna Clefman, or Ms. Michelle Dean. Remember, you have until 5 p.m. tomorrow to complete your SSL hours about tonight's Youth Town Hall. Now I'm going to go ahead and toss it back over to Council President Albornoz to close this out. Thank you guys so much.
We leave that up for 10 more seconds so more people can take
Yeah, we're going to
pictures
put the
of it.
SSL hours up there. Thank you.
Great. And and I can speak with that screen on. That's fine. So first of all, thank you all so much for coming here tonight. Just being here shows a lot of leadership, and there were excellent questions. And I will dare say this was a record crowd when you include both virtual and those that came in person for Youth Town Hall. We had almost 300 students who were tuning in virtually. So that's extraordinary. And that just demonstrates that you all get the importance of opportunities like this. I want to leave you with just 3 quick thoughts. The first is, we talked about mental health issues earlier, and there is an important phone number that's brand new, that's very easy to remember, that I want all of you to be aware of, and that number is 988. 988. If you are feeling, or you know somebody that is feeling completely and totally overwhelmed, that you need help, you need to talk to somebody, you're considering hurting yourself or others, call 988. And that is a resource that all of us should be able to utilize, and it's offered in multiple languages. And the last 2 notes are this. I've been taught a lot of things in my life, and now that I'm an adult, I want to impart just in 20 seconds or less some wisdom that was shared with me a long time ago. And the first thing is this: it's nice to be important, but it's much more important to be nice. Please remember that. And second, don't be afraid to go out on a limb, because that's usually where all the fruit is. So thank you all very much for being out here this evening, and have a great night.